So since shelter in place started a few months ago, I've been coming down to the landscape a ton. Not just to stare at the flowers, but also to stare at the bees. Something about the fact that regardless of what's going on in the human world, bees are still going to be here, foraging for pollen and nectar. It's comforting, and it makes me feel like everything's going to be okay. Now, we hear a lot about how if bees were to disappear, we wouldn't be here. They pollinate our crops. But what we don't think about as much is that when we bring bees into the landscape, they add an extra layer of movement and life. Essentially, we create an outdoor zoo without the cages. Now, before we start talking about how to bring bees into the landscape, there are three topics we need to cover quickly. Those are tongues, colors, and surfaces. So on the subject of tongues, bees are actually more like us than we think. Like humans, they all have different sized tongues. And then check out these bees and their tongues. Now what this means in practical terms with tongue sizes in bees is that small bees with small tongues need small flowers. Larger bees with larger tongues can access the nectar in bigger flowers. Now when it comes to color in the landscape, it's important to know that bees see in a UV spectrum. That means they see white, yellow, pink, purple, blue, orange, but red not so much. This also means that they see colors on flowers that we can't even see at all. Oftentimes, these colors are there to guide and direct the bees to the pollen and nectar at the middle of the flower. So now let's talk about surfaces. What's the big deal with surfaces? Well, over 70% of our bees actually live in the ground. If they don't have access to uncovered surfaces, they can't build their nests. In fact, it's becoming increasingly hard to find any surface in our suburbs or cities that's not covered with one of the following materials: asphalt, concrete, grass, and mulch. In fact, we've really become a society of over-mulchers. We now have landscapes that are mostly mulch and just a few plants. Now check out the following footage where we see a solitary bee going into its nest in the ground and then coming out of the nest. Now notice that the ground the bee is going into is covered in mulch, but it's just a thin layer, about an inch. And then also notice that within that mulch are sticks, leaves, seed pods. The whole idea is not to keep things too tidy. Finally, if you're ever feeling like a puritanical pilgrim who's sacrificing for the cause, stop and take a step back. Remember, a garden's as much for you as it is for the bees. So if there's a plant in the landscape that the bees like but you don't, maybe take it out and put in one that you and the bees both like. With that, I will leave you with the birds, the butterflies, and the bees and sign off by saying, hey-do.